I hereby announce pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act that adequate notice of this meeting has been transmitted on January 24th, 2024. Gentlemen? Gentlemen? Yeah. Has been by the Board Administrative Office to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Township Clerk, and has been posted in the meeting room and in the entrance hall in Town Hall, all pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act. Rena, we could do a roll call.
Sure. Mr. Foster, Mr. Connolly, Mr. Ackerson,
Here.
Mr. Romano, Mr. Fagan, Mr. Mon, Mr. Emma,
Here.
Mr. King, Ms. Plausas, Mr. Silberman,
Here.
Mr. Dorse, and Mr. Bell. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing as we have a moment of silence to honor the military, police, and first responders. Thank you. First order of business, we are going to adopt prior meeting minutes. The first one is for the meeting minutes from February 18th, 2025. We have a motion to accept. Anyone?
Motion.
Second?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Can I second it? Or Tom?
Mr. King.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Eligible to vote, Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mr. Fagan, Mr. King, Mr. Silberman.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. The second meeting minutes are from March 18th, 2025. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Mr. King?
Thank you. Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mr. Fagan,
Yes.
Mr. King, Mr. Silberman.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes for February 18th and March 18th were successfully adopted.
Okay. We're going to go next to the public hearing. The resolution we're going to move that to the end of the meeting. Sorrel Management LLC, the Celebrity School Child Care Center, 2137 Route 35, Block 58, lots 31 and 34, preliminary and final major site plan. The applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval to renovate a portion of the existing three-story building for a child care center. The proposed child care center will be located on the first floor and will occupy approximately 12,000 square feet within the existing three-story building. Additional proposed improvements to the site include reconfiguring parking spaces in the vicinity of the existing three-story building, a pickup and drop-off area, and a playground area to accommodate the child care center. At this time, I guess, turn the mic to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Salvatore Alfieri, Cleary, Jacoby, Alfieri, and Jacobs on behalf of the applicant. It's on. As the chairman indicates, this is a child care center proposal for an existing office building. We have present with us tonight our engineer and our architect, who are the only two witnesses we intend to call. However, we do have the operator of the facility, if it's approved, present, and we also have the property owner present, if there are questions of either of them. We've received reports from some of your departments. We've also received a T&M report dated February 18th and a planner's report dated April 8th, and we're going to start with our engineer.
Okay, we have to have them sworn
Yep,
in, right?
We'll swear in our professionals as well. Sal, we'll swear in your architect as well, so. Everyone, just, you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give with regard to this hearing is the truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
So, for the record, our professionals have been sworn as well as yours. So,
Do we need,
They'll go through the CV, yeah. they're
Okay.
pretty much-
So, Mark, first of all, introduce yourself and advise the board as to by whom you are employed.
Yes, name is Mark Januszewski. Last name is Janiszeweski. I'm employed by Colliers Engineering and Design. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I've been licensed since 2005 in the state. My license is active and in good standing.
Mr. Chair, if you have additional questions of his credentials, we'd be prepared to answer. Otherwise, we'd request that you accept the credentials as a professional engineer.
yes.
Thank you. Okay, so, and we have exhibits that are now on the screen, correct? That we're
Yes.
going to refer to during the course of your testimony. So, and the first one is going to be, Irina, it's going to be A1, is that how we're going to handle this?
Yes.
Okay, so would you identify A1, which is on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
A1 is an aerial, it's titled Overall Aerial Exhibit, and it is dated April 14th, 2025. It's a Google aerial image outlining the property. North is up on the page, and it's at a scale of 1 inch equals 100 feet.
Sal, just for the record, how are we gonna mark these? Or do you have a thumb drive or something you can leave, or,
I can,
you have hard copies?
do you want me to email it,
yeah,
or?
We have it, so.
You have it?
Okay.
I have it, yes.
Okay, great. So the property we're working with is lots 31 and 34, block 58. The property is outlined in red on the exhibit. It has frontage on New Jersey State Highway Route 35, as well as a jug handle of Route 35 and Union Avenue. It's a corner lot. The site was originally developed and is presently developed as an office building. There are 2 office buildings located on Lot 34 with parking spaces in support of that office building. There are additional parking spaces on Lot 31. All of our work is proposed on Lot 34, but we are just showing Lot 31 as that was part of the prior development for the site. The property is known as the Homedale Corporate Plaza. The property is located in the CI, Commercial Industrial Zone District, and is also part of the Route 35 overlay zone. The property is approximately 11.6 acres in size. Directly east of the site is the Centerville Professional Building that is tucked in here with the small building and the grass behind it. There is to the south, as mentioned, Route 35, and across from Route 35 is the Bayshore Veterinary Hospital. To the rear of the site is a residential neighborhood, and to the east is a shopping center strip mall. I'm going to then move over to Exhibit A2, which I will identify here, which is also an aerial exhibit, but this one is just called Aerial Exhibit. It's also dated April 14th, 2025. Again, this is still just an aerial exhibit, but it's zoomed in a little bit more so you can see more of the site clearly on the property here. And I'll try not to touch my mouse too often and make you dizzy. So as previously stated, 2 office buildings on the site. The site was developed over 30 years ago. There are 2 driveways servicing the site. One is located right off of Route 35. This is a right-in only driveway coming from Route 35 if you're coming from the east. The second is a driveway off of Union Avenue, which is a full-service driveway. It lines up with the driveway with the shopping center across the street. All turning movements are permitted at that driveway. There's a stop sign for the driveway, but not for Union Avenue. So the applicant is proposing to convert a portion of the office space in the front building to a daycare. And we're doing minor site improvements as part of this conversion. The daycare will be situated on the first floor of the office building in the front here. And the daycare will occupy approximately 11,758 square feet. The daycare is designed to service up to 170 children with up to 29 staff members. The majority of the improvements to the site will be internal to the building. However, there will be a few site improvements that I will review as part of the daycare, improvements for the daycare.
And while you're on that plan, there's no disturbance or improvements proposed behind the building that you just discussed, is that correct?
That's correct. Nothing is proposed behind it. We have improvements to the front and minor improvements to the side. So Exhibit A3, titled Proposed Aerial Exhibit, also dated April 14th, 2025. The exact same as the prior exhibit, but what I have done is, and I will zoom in here, is in red shows the only proposed improvements that we're proposing. And I'll go through them here. One of the improvements is a 4,503 square foot outdoor playground area located at the southeast corner of the building. The playground will be fenced with a 6-foot high black aluminum picket style fence. Bollards will be placed in front of on the outside of the fence to protect it against any vehicles that may run astray. We're also providing evergreen shrubs by the bollards to kind of soften the look of the fence and the bollards to make it attractive from the street. We are also proposing some additional deciduous, ornamental, and evergreen trees at the front of the site. These are all depicted on the landscape plans that were previously submitted. There was a comment from your engineer to provide some additional evergreen shrubs and bollards on the east side of the fence, which we agree to do. The playground material will be compatible for your typical playground. We're still working at the material. There's a request by your engineer to provide a sample of that prior to construction, which we will agree to provide. The other major site improvement we're proposing is with regard to parking. Currently, as depicted on the aerial image, there are parallel parking spaces on the access drive that's in front of the building running in an east-west direction here. You can see the spaces denoted here that are on the southern side of this access drive. We are proposing to move those spaces to the northern side. And the reason for that is primarily safety. We are going to designate these 8 parallel parking spaces at the front here to be for the Celebree daycare drop-off and pickup. This will allow parents to park the car and get the children out, walk them into the building, check them in. Parents will then walk back out, get in their car, and move on. This is normally about an 8 to 10 minute process. Parents are required to walk their children in, but by moving these parking spaces to the northern side, it prevents both parents and children from crossing a drive aisle where cars are moving in and out.
I just got one question.
Yes.
If that's a drop-off, I could see people parking their cars and up the one entrance off 35. I mean, how are we going to make sure that overly rushed parents aren't going to just back up and prevent people from entering from 35 into the parking lot?
So there will be obviously people coming in from Route 35 and pulling into those spaces. Over half of the vehicles coming in will probably be coming from Union Avenue as well. So some of them will be coming from the driveway at the north. So there will be an even distribution, and I can't speak for what each individual person will do, but if I'm coming from the driveway at the north, I'm probably not going to use those spots right in front. I'm probably going to use the ones designated on the side here, which will help to avoid any backup on Route 35. Our architect can also elaborate more on the drop-off and pickup, but typically, like I said, it's an 8 to 10 minute process. You might only have 4 cars at a time, because it is a staggered drop-off and pickup. Hours of operation will be from 6:30 in the morning to 6:30 in the evening. So there's normally a 2-hour window in the morning and a 2-hour window in the evening for pickup. So there is a staggered flow of traffic in and out.
Could you just show me where the front door is, where the drop-off is?
The front door is, yep, right in this location, right at the front here. At
Is
the
that
top.
door used from both drop-off locations, or is there another?
This will be the only drop-off location. Whether you park in the parallel spaces in the front or on the side, they must be walked into that front. Security is important at these facilities, so it's a single point in and out.
Is it when you, 'cause I'm just concerned, you know, I go to, you drive through these school neighborhoods all the time, people just like to just queue up. And I just see it's such a short, I see people flying off 35 and coming off that ramp, and then I don't know what happens when they come off the ramp, there's no stop sign there, right? I know it's a sharp turn, but.
No, it's a sharp turn, so, and it is an, an S-curve maneuver that they're making where they're coming in and making a turn, so their speed will just naturally be reduced by that. This is different than what you might find in an elementary school drop-off, where elementary schools, all the parents have to arrive at the same time and drop off.
Is it something maybe to soften that? I don't know, the cost, because, you know, people come, now if the parking's on the other side, right? Now they gotta make a sharper turn in rather than going around. I don't know, Craig, I don't know
Yeah.
what your thoughts are, Kate.
We could add some striping to the pavement. There's multiple ways to do traffic calming. One of the ways, which no one's a real fan of, is speed bumps.
It's more of a, I just don't want
speed tables,
people to just wait, and then they, in a rush to get their kid, and they just keep queuing up, and they're coming back, and, you know, people park in those standing zones all the time, right? And so,
I think, I think a couple, just from my experience with this type of application, two things here is that one is that, this is a staggered situation. You know, you can't predict exactly how many people are going to come at any given time, but again, it's not like in elementary school where the bell's at 8 a.m. and the bell's at, 2:30 p.m. It's a staggered time, and people choose these locations partially out of convenience. So, if this is, and for example, this might be a very convenient location for someone like, who goes north on Union Avenue. So I agree with the testimony that it probably will be, there will be entrances on both sides. And I think in terms of, what you're saying about people coming off of Route 35 is that with those parallel spaces is that, first of all, there's a decent number of spaces there. How many are reserved for the school right there in front?
We have 8 parallel spaces in front.
8 are reserved for right there for the school right in front. And, and then right after that, just shortly after that, there's even more spaces. So, I think that it's not, look, you can't speak to the lowest common denominator driver, but I think that most people want to get out of the way if they can. And it's also, it's not really that much of a big difference in a walk. So I'll defer to Craig, but I see what you mean, Scott, because it's a unique situation and there's people coming off quickly. But I think that, some of the things that when I first looked at this application, I thought, is this really a logical place for a daycare? And some of it kind of began to make more sense. And one of that is that you really do, it's very quick, it's a very short walk. And that curve, I think you do slow down a little bit there. So I don't know if Craig feels differently.
I just see parallel parking such a pain, because people have got to back up and pull in, it's gonna choke the people coming off, and I don't know, I don't know. It seems a little wonky to me there.
Is there any staff that's going to be available to assist in making sure the cars are, pulling forward and to assist anybody getting in?
Yeah, but it is one way, isn't it? Because you only make a left.
Somebody will answer that. He just can't. And just the other thing to remember is that these are regular visitors. This isn't like strangers are coming every day. These are people dropping their kids off each day on their way to
Yeah,
work
no,
normally.
Parents like, they always got running
Yeah,
around,
the
they're
people are in a
going
rush.
fast and they rush, and I don't know, it just seems a weird place to be, usually I think those areas it's a steady flow. Now you got people stopping there, moving, I don't know, it just looks a little, that is a one-way coming off, and then when they make the left, it's a one-way, it's only one lane, right?
It's a one-way, but there's, even if a car is parked in one of the parking spaces, there is enough room that there's actually 2 cars could fit.
They
It's
could fit.
approximately 15 to 16 feet from the parking space itself that no
I'm
one
saying
should.
maybe it's worth making that
But
if it's wider or
if someone
something.
would try to, double park next to the parallel space, there is still room to get by. Your typical car is about 6.5 feet wide. Parking spaces are 9 feet, so you're gonna have plenty of room from the parked car. Even if there's another car there, you could still get vehicles by. That I don't, you
How
may
much
get.
room? Because if, people get aggressive and they don't wanna wait, and then they hit the other car, and no one wants to move their car because they
Right.
got in an accident until the cops get there, then it chokes the whole
Per-
area.
Personally, sorry, if
I was just gonna say, I think that some of this is gonna be operational testimony, because like they said, it's required. I don't think, and I'll let the applicant say this, but I don't think they're gonna look very fondly on people parallel parking, or double parking and bringing their kids inside.
Yeah, I'd like to s-
So, I'd like to hear, we'll talk about that, so.
Yeah.
So I think Frank just wanted to comment.
So yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that, coming off, I agree, there's a little bit of a concern with the backup onto 35 too. But with the S curve and then having to make that quick left to get into the one-lane driveway, that'll slow people up enough, coming around that and getting into the spots. I was just out there and there is enough room to get a car by a parallel parking spot, because right now there's parallel parking on the other side. So there is room to do that. And this is something we can ask of for operations, but of course, I think that this would be something that would be monitored, and if there is an issue, then maybe that staggering can be adjusted in some way to better, push out the different drop-offs so that you don't have as many cars at a specific time.
All right.
I think that if the spaces are filled in front, they can automatically go down the side. They don't have to walk around.
Right, and it's, I think also, you'll be able to see if the spots are filled there out in the front, and it's pretty close. Those other spots, it's not like you have to go all the way to the back of the building or anything like that.
All right.
There's a comment in the letter, so the spaces that were on the south side of that drive were designated for a specific tenant. There is no need for that anymore. We've coordinated with the property owner that those spaces can be removed, and the tenants will go use the other spots in the lot. As mentioned, we are redoing the ADA striping, ADA ramps, and signage on the left side of the building here to bring them up to current standards. It's really just an improvement to bring them to current ADA standards, considering when the office building was originally constructed. As part of these parking improvements, there's a net loss of only 3 total parking spaces for the entire site. The site is currently short of the parking ordinance requirement of 413 spaces. The existing site has 410 parking spaces. After our improvements, we will be at 407 parking spaces, putting us in a need for a variance. The ordinance requirement for parking for a daycare is 1 space for every 8 children and 1 space for every employee. This dictated the additional spaces. That's keeping us in a variance situation. Our architect will provide a little bit more on the pickup and drop off and parking. We did do a parking analysis that is in the traffic impact study we submitted. We do feel there's adequate parking on the site. As mentioned, it's not like these spaces are occupied for 8 hours a day. They're occupied for 10 minutes at a time. And there is plenty of parking on site in our professional opinion.
Mark, if I may, I mentioned this in my letter, but I just want to clarify this. So, the Township of Homedale ordinance has a section that I have to admit I was not familiar with until this application. And that is section 30-116.3. That provides regulations relating to child care centers in non-residential zones. I'm not sure, when this was put in place, et cetera. However, the municipal land use law supersedes this. The municipal land use law permits child care centers in all non-residential zones, and it also, it just permits them. There's no standards there, and it also exempts them from parking requirements based on square footage. However, in the real world, that's not really practical for reasons like we just discussed with pickup and drop off. But you know, I just want to be careful here because I think that this is a bigger conversation for this section of the ordinance, but I don't think this section is enforceable based on the current state statute related to childcare and the way that it supersedes it. So, you know, if you're looking at this in terms of a variance condition, I don't think you really need to, but my opinion is that these are not variances. They do need other variances, but the parking is not. I would say, you know, keep your review of this to whether you think the circulation in the parking is safe, if it's appropriate for the site, and if they can still meet all of the needs of the other office users. So, you know, just to give what the actual numbers here are, the required for the office building as an office building was 413 spaces. The site had 410. They will now have 407. So, you know, technically what we would really do is you would subtract the square footage for the daycare, which I think is about 12,000, from that. So the parking requirement goes down. And again, this is all statute from municipal land use law, and I can cite that later too. But, you know, I think I appreciate that the applicant was, you know, extra cautious with this section of the ordinance because I think it is a little bit of a gray area, but we did a little research on it in my office, and I think, you know, I'm not sure if it's enforceable as a variance condition. But again, you still got to have people put cars somewhere for pickup and drop off, employees, et cetera. So practically, you know, the board needs to be comfortable with what they're proposing.
Then later down the road, if the space changes use to something that's non-child care related, they're gonna have to put spots back?
They would have to technically request a variance, or it would just depend on what that was. It would depend on, you know, if the township ordinance changes. But again, you know, we're going from 413, 410 to 407, and this is a, you know, it's one space per 250. I'm not sure what the tendency of this office building is, and honestly, things with offices are changing so quickly. I'm not sure, you know, what you know, that's a typical office parking ratio, but it's
413 is based on an office building that would have tenants there 9 to
Yes,
5. This
exactly.
is a daycare that's not gonna have,
exactly.
okay.
Yes.
So we'd be deducting the square footage requirements for that floor, but adding the parking requirements based on the number of children slash employees.
That is not enforceable. That's something that should be taken out of the ordinance. State statute supersedes that. And it says, because basically they want to encourage childcare centers to be in non-residential zones close to where people work. And so this is section 66.6 of the municipal land use law. And it basically, it exempts childcare centers from parking ratios, it exempts them from floor area ratio, et cetera. And it permits them in all zones. It's one of the very few, you know, there's a few of them, you know, EVs, you know, certain other uses, but this is one of the few things where the state really does supersede local control.
Right, and just to follow that up, 66.6 exempts FAR also, but if we backed out 4 spaces per 1,000, the 12,000 square feet, that's 48 spaces, so technically, and we're not suggesting that we should follow this standard, as Kate indicates, but you would subtract 408 from 413, 48 from 413, it'll be significantly lower. And we're providing 407, which is significantly higher, so, but we're not using that statute in any way to justify the parking. We're comfortable the parking works as proposed, and it's far in excess of what's required, so we're comfortable it works.
Yes, yeah, exactly, Sal. And that's the thing. It's like this, per the MLUL, yes, that you can't require parking, but like I said, in theory, this is still a functioning site. So that's, I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Now, and speaking of statutes that have been adopted since this building was built, we have the EV parking space statute as well, correct?
Correct.
So we don't think we're required to, but if we are, we'll provide them. So we'll work with your professionals, since we're not adding new parking spaces in terms of the total number.
Yeah, I think in Homedale, typically the requirement has been if you're adding floor area or if you're adding parking spaces, we'll never say no to new EV parking spaces.
Right.
So, you know, if you think there's a need for them, that's something, you know, could do as a condition of approval, to discuss with the engineer.
Yeah, we don't think they're needed for, especially for our use, because no one's really staying there. The parents are dropping the kids off and leaving, so none of our patrons are gonna benefit by an EV parking space.
Okay.
Go ahead, continue, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Nope, good. Moving away from parking and moving to dedicated loading zone is, this building will not have a dedicated loading zone associated with it, so we're seeking a waiver from this requirement. Large trucks are not anticipated in and out of the site as part of the daycare operations. What we anticipate coming in and out of the site at most would be like a UPS truck, Amazon truck, FedEx truck. Typically, those deliveries happen at, well, at my house, Amazon's there at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. But typically for office buildings, they're there at midday. You're talking 10 a.m. through 4 p.m. And that's when those front spaces will likely not be occupied, that the delivery trucks will be able to utilize those spaces right at the front of the building, run the package in, and run it back out. We don't anticipate any large vehicles. As mentioned, this is an existing site. We have run truck turning movements for fire trucks. Everything operates now as it will in the future with regard to deliveries, fire trucks, and refuse trucks. Site circulation and traffic, we did do a traffic impact study that was submitted with the application. As noted in the study, the site driveways and the Route 35 and Union Avenue intersection will operate at or near the no-build levels for both the AM and peak hour traffic. What that's saying in layman's terms is there's going to be no change to the traffic with it. With regard to the lighting, there was a comment about addressing lighting. I've been to the site. There are pole-mounted lights throughout the site. As I mentioned earlier, we're not adding any additional parking. We're just moving parking around. We're not adding any additional pavement. I'd like to request that the site lights that are there now can remain there and not need to do a detailed analysis of that area. Moving on to signage, there is one existing site identification sign located at the southwest corner of the building near the last parallel parking space. That's the pylon sign that calls out the Homedale Corporate Plaza. We are proposing a freestanding monument sign at the southeast portion of the site, right outside of the playground area. This sign, we're proposing it as an additional identification sign. Majority of the people that are coming in and out have the address. They're going to be familiar with it. But we feel that when you're coming in from the Route 35, to have that sign right there, noting that this is the building with the daycare, we feel it's almost more of a directional sign than it is a monument sign, because it will be on the north side of the access drive. The sign is, as currently shown on the plan, 65 feet from the right-of-way, which puts it about 75 feet from the curb line of Route 35. So it's set back further than you typically would have for a monument sign advertising. It's more of a directional sign for those that are in the complex with it. We're also proposing a facade sign directly adjacent to the front entrance, so that when people do park, it's clear where the Celebree entrance will be, and that way it's easy to find as well for anybody coming in and out. We do need a variance for the second monument sign. That is my,
A couple follow-ups then. There was a departmental report issued by both the fire and traffic safety officer regarding additional protections and bollards. You've had a chance to review that?
yes, we agree to comply with those recommendations.
Okay, and then in terms of to the extent you haven't commented specifically on any of the comments of both the board engineer and board planners reports, are there any technical comments contained within the report that you could not address as a condition of approval?
There are not. We can address the comments as, should we get a favorable review here.
That's all we have in the engineer.
Did you get into, did you talk at all about the reduction in playground space? Did you get into that, or?
The architect's gonna.
Oh, the architects can do, okay.
That's also another one that's not
State.
enforceable. That's a state statute.
We
So
have,
that-
we have to get Department of Education approval for the playground, for all of the interior improvements, for all everything related to this facility.
They will not be able to get a license unless they meet the state requirements for things like outdoor space, which all supersede the township standards. And again, I don't know,
But I'm looking at, isn't the township standard 30 square feet per child?
that's what it says. It's and I don't know exactly offhand what the state one is. I think it's similar.
But our Homedale one is enforceable, right?
No.
No, really.
Proceed.
Oh, so but I'm saying the state, it takes precedence over the local if it's not more restrictive?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting.
Is the,
Think of it like NJDEP. Honestly, it's like the same type of thing where their requirements take precedent over local. They supersede local requirements.
A lot of times if there's difference, usually you follow the more restrictive one. You're saying that's not the case in this situation?
Well, it's kind of a moot point because the applicant just said that, I just heard him say that it's 35 square feet per child for the state.
Oh, okay,
So I'll let them put the testimony on about how that math will math out
Okay.
because they can't open if they don't have it.
right, okay.
The only other thing that I want to mention is that I don't know if you mentioned this, but in my opinion, a variance is technically required for the location of the playground because it's in the front yard. And it's going to be about 65 feet from the front yard property line. If we could just show that again. You know, typically it's kind of accessory use. It's also, you know, it's kind of inherent to the use, but either way, accessory uses are required the same setback as a principal use. So since they're proposing the playground area in the front there, that's gonna be a
Right,
variance.
and can you just give the board details as to how we're mitigating that variance relief?
Yes, so we're mitigating it. Number one, we've designed a fence that is an attractive fence. We're using a black picket aluminum style, not just a chain link fence, something that's visually attractive. We're providing evergreens along the entire front and side of it. We are also proposing some additional landscaping in the island in between Route 35 and the access drive that will also buffer the playground itself. We explored other locations for the playground. We actually had a pre-application meeting with the township last year, talking about it, and it was the recommendation of those professionals at the time that this would be a good location because you're directly adjacent to the building. One of the ideas was to put it on the side of the building, but that would require children crossing this emergency fire access drive. So we do feel that this is the best location despite the need for the variance.
the signage on the facade, will that be lighted?
Yes, I believe it will be.
What are the hours that the sign will be lit?
Will the architect provide
Yeah,
testimony?
the architect.
Yeah.
There was also a letter from the Homedale Environmental Commission about trees that were going to be removed. You mentioned that you're gonna add trees.
Well, they're saying prevent trees from being removed.
Yeah, well, four trees are coming down in the playground area.
We're moving forward and we're adding much more.
Yeah. In order to facilitate the playground area, we are removing 4 trees, but we are proposing 19 trees to go in, so we're putting in
Did you
more
get
than
the
4
letter
trees.
from, did you
I
get?
have not seen that.
Can we provide it to you right now? I can give it to you right now if you want one. Just so you know.
Okay.
I'm sure we got it somewhere.
No, I don't know, because it copied our professional, I'm not sure.
Everything gets sent to the applicant.
Okay.
But yes, we have no issue.
Trees.
And I think there are some landscape comments in the T&M report, which we've agreed to address as well, and stormwater reports, comments.
Okay, do we want to bring, are you done, Mark?
I'm done.
I have questions.
Mark, go ahead, Wes.
So I was able to spend some time twice at the site. Today I spent about 30 minutes there. And one of the observations I had is that people coming off of 35, probably 75% of them made a left and went on that little street there. I think they want to catch the parking in that section over there. So I think you're going to have a little more traffic than is presently being discussed. So we're moving the parking from the left side to the right side. It's still a fire lane, but I don't know laws about fire lanes. So it's okay for the parking to be on the building side of the street, right? Even though that technically is a fire lane? Is that right?
Yes, I mean, if you even look at the building here, to the east side of the building is parking directly adjacent to the building. So the issue is, as long as the firefighters can have access to the site, which they can in between parked cars, for it.
I'm a little bit, need some clarification on what the heck this site is. This site is one giant site with one owner, 2 buildings on it. Is that right? Yeah. And the buildings look totally different from each other. You can access from 35, but you must exit the property onto Union Avenue. So if you're coming off 35 and going down that single lane, so my point is, it's a lousy layout in terms of traffic and sight lines in that area. You cannot go down there, go straight down, and then make a straight left to get out of the property. The other building that's there, you're on the loading dock side of it. It's almost like you're lost in the spot. So I think some better signage may be appropriate there, at least to tell people how to get out. When I first went, the first visit there, after I went down this little lane, I thought I'd be able to get to the left side of the other building. Of course, you're not. You can't do that. So it's like a little maze. You have to figure out how to get out of that spot. And even getting out onto Union Avenue is a death trap, right? You got people coming off the jug handle. You got people coming out across the way from Job Lot there, along with people coming across from Centerville Road, and then you got people flying up Union Avenue. There's not much you can do about that, but, I mean, one thing you could do is separate the entrance from the exit with a white line to people to sort of stay over on one side of the point. The signs. Again, when we went there, we came off Union Avenue and went up the side of the building. So if I went straight, I would have went out onto 35. Except for that lousy red sign that says "Do not enter," you'd be very well tempted to go out to Route 35 that way. The driveway there actually kind of got a little of a right to it. It looks like, except for the sign, you could get out there. Out on 35, there's a sign that says Misco Plaza. It says car entry only, Misco Plaza. I don't know what Misco Plaza is. The sign is very badly deteriorated. So there's not very good signage on 35 to tell you to be able to even what that is. Then there's one more sign that says, I think it says one-way do not enter. And it's confusing because you can't see the sign. The sign is facing what we're calling the fire lane with the parallel parking. So if you drove the wrong way down one way, then you'd see that sign that says do not enter, but it's facing you. So what are you supposed to do not enter? It should say do not make a right, but you can't go that way anyway.
So, a couple points. First, as it relates to the traffic, one of the benefits of the daycare is you're not going to have everyone showing up at 9 and leaving at 5. You're going to have people staggered throughout, so it doesn't create a concentration of traffic leaving or entering. But I did look back at the property owner and asked him if we could work with your board professionals to not only deal with those 35 signs, but to also add additional directional signage so that it could filter people properly to the exits. So we have no problem providing a directional signage and straightening out those few signs that you felt really don't achieve what they're supposed to achieve.
Further, so when you use this little roadway there and you drop a child off or pick them up, you have to go around the whole building. That's what you have to do. And now you're navigating other, active parking spots for, in fact, other buildings. The signs that are painted on the roadway that say stop, I think they need to be looked at as well. So,
They need to be, I'm sorry, I didn't hear
looked
that.
at,
Okay.
redone. The paint, the paint is, however old it is, it's worn away.
Do you guys, in those spots, is it say 15-minute only parking, drop-off only? Because there's other occupants on the second and third floors, right? So what stops them from parking in front of the building?
We have signage that, this is the site plan that was submitted, so it's, I don't know if I need to mark it as an exhibit, but we do have signage that is, Celebrate School pickup and drop-off only, is how we're designated those 8 spaces up front. So that it's, obviously, we can control our staff by telling our staff not to park there, and that these would be open for the parents to drop off.
And I'm not
Yeah.
sure if this owner ever granted the town Title 39 jurisdiction, but, so that the town can enforce traffic on site, but we have, if not, we could provide that as well.
Yeah, I think Wes brought up a great point about the fire lane thing. I don't know what the answer is. Do you guys know what the answer is there with that?
The fire officials
he's
saw
okay.
this plan.
And they don't have a problem with cars parking? Because
No.
that's the main entrance, so it's,
Now, the fire officials only and he's seen this, he or she, was that he wanted additional bollards along the playground area to make sure that cars don't cross it, but he had no issue with the fire lane issue. At least there's nothing reflected.
right,
in
I
the
mean,
report.
maybe some people didn't pick up on it, and, it was his only comment, but,
Well, we
I'm
are-
looking at the fire hydrants right there, right in front of the building, and
Yeah, and we are striping that side of the street with both signing and striping that as a no parking fire lane along that entire stretch there of the one-way drive.
I'm sorry, Wes, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Feel free.
What's that?
Feel free to. The first time I was there, I went into the building to see if there was a management office. I saw no management office there. The second time I was there today, there was a truck parked in the fire lane on the side of the two-way fire lane. I was there 30 minutes. He was there the entire 30 minutes, parked in the fire lane, and had the side door open and was doing, you know what? I don't know what he was doing, but he was there the entire time. So, is that supposed to be a town-enforced, or is there some type of management? And getting back to the signs, so is someone not supposed to be able to park in those drop-off spots? So if you went at 12 noon, there'd be no cars there, is that right? It's like a 15-minute, 10-minute drop-off?
Only for pickup, drop-off, period.
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 At the Environmental Commission, this week, we had Steve Winters there, the construction official. The main comment he made was, since he started, he could not believe how many cars have run into buildings in Homedale. He ticked off 10 to 12 incidents of cars versus buildings, and neither one won. So, to your point about I never thought about coming 50 miles an hour off of 35, but the playground's a dead reckoning there. So somebody needs to take a look at what happens when car meets your new sign there. And
I
maybe,
was thinking softening that, maybe make it not such a, maybe make it so it's more of a V than a
a
big
direct
S.
hit
Yeah.
rather than a direct hit. Well, my concern is stopping the car before it enters the playground.
Well, we do have bollards spaced
Yeah,
on the outside of it, to prevent it. And
Yeah.
And the fence for the playground is approximately 10 feet behind the curb, obviously. I agree, a car's gonna win jumping over a curb, but we do have the bollards spaced all throughout there as protection for that.
And we did offer, if your engineer or if the board wants to provide striping or other markings on the pavement there, just to try and slow people down when they see. Again, everybody coming here from our end are regulars, but you're right, there are other people in the office building that will use that same entrance that we don't have control over.
I was surprised at how many people use that path, that come in off the highway and want to get to that parking spaces there, rather than going to the back of the building. So yeah, I think you're going to see more traffic than we might be considering going along the front of the building there. So the construction official talked about the number of recent cars entering buildings. So again, I've got a concern about that playground and protection from cars coming off of 35.
Does the playground go right up to the curb?
No, the playground is a minimum of 10 feet off the curb. We have the parking space, 5-foot sidewalk, 5-foot area where we have the bollards, and there's evergreens in between the bollards and the fence.
I'm not concerned about the 3 parking spaces. However, this property is gigantic. There's a whole section in the back that's fenced off. It's got construction trailers in there. I thought it was part of that brick building, but it's not part of the brick building. It's actually apparently owned by this property. So I'm not sure what's going on back there, but man, if you were looking for 3 spots to add, it would seem to me to be pretty easy to add them there. But I don't think parking is a problem there.
No, I mean, do we know now what the occupancy, that means parking an issue ever there? I mean, do we know that?
My understanding is no. I mean, I don't, this was approved 30 years ago. This is the commercial industrial zone, which, we don't hear about a lot in Homedale because it's very small these days. But, that rear building, I think, there's a mix of, office, there's some medical, but there also is some, I'm not gonna call it warehousing, but there's some, more, less intense, less employee intense uses, more storage based, I think.
Yeah. Do we know who the occupants are on the 2nd and 3rd floor? What kind of businesses there?
We don't, but the owner, the property owners here, or maybe
It's
the
not
architect.
medical or anything like that, right?
I don't know, we'd have to ask them.
Okay.
Around the entire building, you've got the rat feeding stations or rat traps. I'm not sure what they are. They're black boxes, and they're for rodents. So I imagine the new playground, you're going to remove the rat box, at least in that section. But then that leaves the rats.
Yeah.
Further, there's smoking stations. It's not on the plans, but they're there. So you're going to still allow smoking at that entryway?
No, the state law prevents smoking within a certain distance. I think it's 25 or 50 feet from an entrance, so those would have to be located away from the entrance.
Really?
Wow.
So they're not supposed to be 25 feet within the doorway? Is that right? I was thinking of the playground more than the doorway, but they're there now.
I could see
They
it
were
on
probably
Google.
there before the law was passed, since the building is 30 years old.
Sal, just for the record, will that comment by Wes be looked at when you go for state approval?
Pardon me?
Will the state look at those issues when you go for state approval?
I'm not sure, the architect will,
Yes.
he'll answer that.
Okay.
He's nodding
shaking his
yes,
head
but
yes, but he'll come up
he'll
and
come up.
testify.
I guess so, before we go to the architect, anything more issues with what the planner has to say about parking? The engineer?
No parking, but I still got the engineer.
What's that?
I got a few more for the
Yeah,
engineer.
okay,
if
go ahead.
that's all right.
Sorry.
So the trees, while there are 4 trees there now, there's 2 stumps there. So there were 6 trees there, I don't know how long ago, but they're gone. And so I didn't quite see where the trees are going in the new plan, but you don't have to answer that now if somebody else answers
No,
that.
he has
I can bring it up right here. So you can see here we're proposing 17 evergreen shrubs along the front, so that'll be green year round to screen the fence and the playground. We've agreed to add some additional shrubs on this east side. We already have shrubs on the west side. We're also adding a mulch bed on the left of the concrete walk here. 2 trees are going here, and then we are adding, like I mentioned, trees along the front here where there's only one existing tree in that front area. So we're sprucing up that front part more, knowing that we did take down 4 trees and adding a total of 19 back, and that doesn't count the shrubs we're adding.
Okay. So my next concerns have to do with the stormwater runoff. And I'm not sure why we're not talking about that in terms of what's going to happen with the playground area. I understand you're talking about a few different options for surface area. So I'd like to know about impervious coverage. I noted in the plan you're going to put bricks under the sign on the left-hand side, the one that says Corporate Plaza. I'm not sure why you're doing that. That makes it additionally impervious surface. Right now, in that playground area, you've got like a storm sewer kind of thing. And it looks like you're proposing to change that to some type of storm sewer grate. But I'm not sure how that integrates with the new playground. And again, I'm talking about impervious surface added to the playground area. And this drains to East Creek. East Creek floods that exact street that you're on, and that street gets closed to the flooding. So I'm not too anxious to add additional stormwater runoff to East Creek. But you can talk about how that's going to change that area, please.
Yeah, so we did submit a, what I believe I call it a stormwater management impact statement as part of this application. We are going to propose a permeable material for the playground area. It's yet to be selected, whether it's synthetic, a mulch. We're still working on finalizing those details, but it will be a pervious material. So with that in mind, and the changes to the minor changes to the parking and sidewalk, there's actually a reduction of 0.01 acres of impervious surface. Call it a wash. There's no increase in impervious surface. Therefore, there's going to be no increase in stormwater, the rate of runoff or the volume of runoff from the site. You did mention the little bit of drainage work we're doing up front, which is correct. Right now, there is what we call a flared end section. I'll flip to our existing conditions and demolition plan. Flared end section is essentially just an open pipe that the water is flowing into. Flared ends are used for either discharging or intake. In this case, it was an intake. We don't want children crawling into that, so that's why we are proposing to put in a typical small inlet in that area, such that no one can get into that storm sewer system. It's your typical inlet grate that you have in parks, parking lots, all across it. We did slide it over to the left to kind of keep it out of the main play areas for it. But we do need to capture runoff in that area such that we don't get ponding, flooding. You also don't want the water to run off onto the sidewalk, which can then freeze. If it melts in the daytime, freezes overnight, you could get ice issues. So it really is, in my opinion, important to keep a drain in this location. There was a comment from, I'm not sure if it was the engineer here or the TNM engineer, about possibly moving that. I do want to keep it there personally because I think it's important to prevent water ponding in that area. But as I mentioned, there will be no increase in runoff rate or volume as part of the application.
How does that integrate with the playground itself? Right now, it's kind of a sloped, everything slopes to that pipe.
Yeah. So our architect is going to talk a little bit more about the playground area.
Right.
But with it, and we're still, we can still refine this area a little bit. There are some comments about slopes, landing areas that we agree to address, and we can look to address any comments on that as well.
So your testimony is that there is no increase, in fact, there's a decrease in stormwater runoff from the proposed
I would be
improvements.
comfortable saying there's no increase. 0.01 is small enough that there's no change in the rate or volume of runoff as part of the application.
Thank you.
Lewis? Okay.
Craig was-
Yes, Craig.
So before you referenced the TNF report, we had a separate TSNS report prepared. But I understand by the way you're answering some of the comments, you've seen that and are willing to address that.
Yes.
I agree with the engineers. Sorry. I agree with the engineers that I don't see any real increase in stormwater based off of putting the pervious material there. In fact, we do have what we call a trigger for when stormwater requirements are required, and we are not at that trigger for this application. So
Is that trigger based on square footage of
that trigger
disturbance?
is based off of three things. Number one, it's based off of an acre of disturbance, which we don't have that. Number two, a quarter of an acre of new impervious coverage, which especially since this is going to be pervious, that doesn't count. Or a quarter of an acre of new vehicular surface, in other words, adding parking spaces. So because of that, those triggers are not met. So there's no need to do what we always, the water quality, water quantity, what we always hear about. So that was in the TMN letter, and I understand from the engineer. So, and as far as my comments, they were technical in nature, which I'm sure that we could work together to address those, and anything that wasn't technical, you've addressed in your testimony. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so anyone else for the engineer? No? All right, then I guess this other gentleman, the architect, would like to come up. I don't think so, maybe.
Justin, would you give the board your name and employment, and then credentials?
Sure. Justin Mahalik, also with Colliers Engineering and Design. Address is 300 Tice Boulevard, Suite 101, Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey, 07677. I'm a graduate of New Jersey Institute of Technology, School of Architecture, graduated in '93. Became licensed in New Jersey in '97. My license is active and in good standing. I have appeared before just some local boards here: Eatontown, Shrewsbury Township, Matawan, Freehold Township, Middletown, all daycare projects. And I'll talk a little bit about, just to add to that, that I've been the architect of record for 40-plus daycare centers here in New Jersey alone. Been doing this for 17 years, so I am not a traffic expert, but I have been involved in testimony and can talk a bit about what had been discussed, related to traffic, parking, and so forth, that I'm just going to add my own professional opinion as we move forward.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You can proceed.
The exhibit that's on the screen, is that something that was submitted with the submission, or is that a new exhibit?
That was submitted with the submission. This is our proposed floor plan and licensing chart, sheet number PR-1, dated 12/6/2024.
So what exhibit is that going to be?
It's part of the application.
That's part of the application.
Part of the
Okay.
application, yeah. So this is, I'll just kind of walk through the floor plan a bit. Try not to make anybody too dizzy as we work with this PDF. So the main entrance of the building, essentially one of those double door entrances is going to be shifted so that it's going to become the entrance solely to the daycare center, while the other double doors to the left will remain the double door entry to the main building. That was so we had a direct entrance, we could secure that entrance, and also just have the entrance directly from the exterior instead of the interior of the building. There is a reception area. I'll add at the front door. What you see in that box, CR to the right of the front doors, is essentially a card reader. So again, any parents, caregivers for children are within a system that will, control the door. So this door is controlled from the exterior. There will also be a camera located outside of that entrance, so that we're seeing everybody that is exiting or entering the daycare center. The reception area, there is a receptionist. The interior double doors here also has a card reader, so that's also secured. And then once you enter the center, we do have an office off of the reception area. Generally would have the owner or the director of the center. Once you get into the center, this center has a total of 10 classrooms. The age groups go from infant up to essentially age 4, pre-K, preschool. There is one multi-purpose room that I'm just going to zoom in on that is entitled 3B here. And that was in order to provide some additional interior play area space for the children in times of inclement weather. But in general, I could work this around just to briefly show you. As you come into the center, we have 2 infant classrooms marked Infant A. Actually, we have 3, Infant A, Infant B, and Infant C. A buggy room, which is for very large 4 to 6 seat strollers for the infants. Continuing down that corridor, we have a toddler classroom. There is a pantry. There is no cooking on site. It is essentially food is brought in from the outside and is then delivered to the children. Generally, the intake will be into the pantry and then distributed. But we do have in the pantry a microwave, a 3-bay sink, typically also a freezer and a refrigerator. Generally, with each center, if there's a requirement for a health department application, that is done, and we will work through that process. There is a laundry closet, washer and dryer. You will see down at the south end of this corridor that we have what is the direct access to the playground. So all of the children would be accessing the playground from this door and then entering back in through that door. That door also will have card access. We are showing on the plan, you'll see we note concrete ramps. There is some change in elevation there, and we do have to provide accessibility and not only meet accessibility requirements, but also in time of evacuation. That is also an evacuation point potentially for the infants in cribs. So we're always making sure that the access from the interior to the playground is essentially at the same elevation. So we'll be working with the civil engineer in order to finalize that. And there were a couple comments in the report about handrails being required. Of course, we will comply with that if they are actually ramps and not just a sloped surface. The playground is divided into 2 parts, which is in compliance with New Jersey Department of Children and Families. So we do have the younger child area to the right of the drawing and the older children to the left. There was a comment on the playground size not being consistent between the civil and the architectural. The playground size would be 2,592 square feet, so that would be a revision to our numbers, so we're matching the civil plan. But in general, the total square footage is just under For the exterior play area, just under 4,000 square feet at 3,936 square feet. As far as the requirement, the New Jersey Department of Children and Families, their requirement for playground is 35 square feet per child at the time of use. There is no requirement based on a percentage of the number of children that are licensed for the facility. The absolute minimum required playground is 350 square feet. So if you divide that by 35, you'd only be allowed to have 10 children out on that play area at a given time. So here, if you're just dividing the 3,936 square feet by 35, you roughly would have 100 children allowed out on that playground. That is not the intent. And what occurs, this is not like an elementary school where generally you have a lunch hour and everybody's out on the playground, or there might be 1 or 2 sessions for a very large school. At a daycare center, they're cycling the classrooms in and out. So the children generally get roughly a 45-minute period out at the playground. And so if you can imagine, there may be 2 classrooms that are out on the playground at any given time, but they're required by licensing to remain within that 35 square feet per child. So also they're required to have a teacher-child ratio at all times when it's operating. So that means that for whatever number of children are out on the playground, there has to be the required number of teachers or staff with those children as well. So you don't just have 2 aides out on a playground with 65 kids. You know, there are multiple teachers that are out there along with the children. So the entire classroom is generally moving out along with those teachers to stay within that ratio and then cycle throughout the day. Children are not out on the playground during dusk or, you know, in dark hours, so there's generally no lights out on the playground. There'll be no lights out there at night. The children are only out there during daylight hours. As well, there's also a requirement by temperature. Again, that is all governed by licensing. Okay, so understanding that you do have a local ordinance on playground size, my only question would go back to, it does not say whether it's at time of use. So once again, you know, again, I understand the
It says, I have
testimony
it
earlier,
here.
but
Yeah, it basically says, based on the license capacity authorized.
which would require a larger playground. So we will be complying with New Jersey Department of Children and Families for the requirements for licensing as far as what we are proposing.
Can you just go into a little more detail what that licensing process is?
So actually, the applicants, prior to even signing their lease, did have DCF come out to the site to do a cursory review of the site, which they do so that people don't essentially sign a lease and then find out that DCF wouldn't approve the site. So they did a walkthrough, they provide a report. There's really nothing in that report that stands out that this will not comply as a child care center once it's completed. So that's number one. Number two is DCF will not come back out to the site until the center is completed and has a certificate of occupancy. At that time, first of all, prior to that, there'll be an application that will be submitted. There is some water testing that has to be done. There's some other environmental testing that has to be done, and that would all be supplied back to DCF. And then licensing will come out to the site. As I said, once CO is in hand, and they will actually physically walk through the space, the playground. They do look at also where the entries and the exits are, because they also want to make sure that in the event of an evacuation, the route that which the children might be taking is also going to be safe. And so once that licensing is completed, sometimes there are some small comments. I mean, sometimes literally they are looking at whether there is a sharp edge on a piece of wood molding. So they are, you know, very detail oriented. And then once they do the report and it is approved, then of course they do issue a license. that will, by classroom, dictate the number of children that can be in each of those classrooms as a max and the maximum licensing. So as you, on this drawing PR-1, we do have a child care licensing chart that I'm showing now on screen. So basically, this chart is illustrating at the bottom under the column that says number of children, a maximum of 170 children that potentially this facility would be licensed for. Also, you know, each of these columns, we have more columns on here that are more for internal use, but the key things are, what you'll see is the age group column, which is second from the left. We then list what the actual areas are, what the required area is, and what the required means is that's the minimum area you must have in order to meet then, over to the right, the number of children that we are listing here. You could see that there is square feet per child column, and you could see that that's all 35 square feet. So the interior space requirement is also 35 square feet per child. And then back over to the right, you'll see a column for teacher-child ratio. So that ratio there then allows us to calculate, based on the number of children, the total number of staff that would be required for those children. And then you could see at the lower part of that column, we have 2 staff members that would be generally in the office, 1 that would be in reception, for a total of 29 staff as a maximum. Something to note is that in the daycare industry, generally, the occupancy on a daily basis is between 80 and 85%. So we, of course, are designing to the maximum that there could be, whether it's parking, whether it's playground area, but in actuality, daycares mostly have an 80 to 85% occupancy on a given day. Why? Children are sick, families are going on vacation, parents come home early or now are working from home and are keeping the children home. So there's varied reasons in the industry, but generally that's the industry standard. As was also, again, just to continue, and I'll make this a little quicker, there are a total of 2 toddler classrooms. Toddlers are generally in the 2 years age. We then have, it's actually 18 months to 2 years. We then have 2 two-year-old classrooms. Just kind of coming around, I'm working my way to the top right of the plan. You'll see that we have a pre-K room, we have a 4A room, which is 4 years, and lastly, we have a 3-year-old. So basically, every age group is covered. Why there are 3 versus 2 versus 1, that all comes from corporate, what they look at for demographics, children in the area, and then ultimately come up with what's the right number of classrooms and age groups for them. The total area, 11,758 square feet, is what we have for this center. As far as egress, I talked about the main entrance, double door here at the front of the building. We have 2 other means of egress. On the right side of the plan, there's an existing exit that actually exits through an exit stair. This was noted also in the report. There is an existing stair on the exterior, concrete stair, that basically directly dumps out into that drive aisle. So as far as adding a protective measure that in the event of evacuation, children aren't just, keep in mind, children are exiting along with the teachers, but we generally don't want the children just coming straight out into a drive aisle in the event of evacuation. So we're redesigning that exit such that it will turn along to the existing sidewalk, so that, again, the pedestrian traffic will then travel along the building and not into the drive aisle. That, of course, will have handrails on both sides per code, will also be designed to meet the proper rise, run as we would need. The other means of egress is actually back into the building. So again, that is a third means of egress, but generally not the means of egress we would be using unless if for whatever reason there was some type of activity outside the building occurring here on, you know, say the side, that then they would be utilizing the interior egress to then go to the rear of the building. But once you're in the common area of the building, for those of you that were there, you'll note that there is egress at the rear and egress at the front. So we more than meet the requirements of egress for the space. That's more or less the layout, the playground. We talked a little bit about protection. So generally, when we are providing vehicular traffic protection to the playground, the choice is always bollards, 6-inch steel concrete filled bollards, generally 4 foot or 6 foot on center. This is standard practice. This is standard practice that also, by way of engineering, will meet requirements for impact of vehicles. I am not going to testify right now that that could meet a car at 90 miles an hour coming off Route 35 Airborne, but in general, the code has requirements for that the civil engineer, you know, would need to meet. And that's what, you know, the proposal is here, and in accordance with the request that was in the comments. So that's the protection of the playground. The playground is enclosed by a 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence. That is so that we're providing privacy for the children from the outside. Again, we could have fire engines, police on Route 35, kind of distractions if children are out on the playground, with an open, visible fence to what's going on. So generally, the choice is a solid fence. It also does provide some acoustics in terms of any noise from the interior of the playground and even from the exterior of the playground. But again, it's there to protect children also, so that someone on the outside can't just reach over the fence to potentially try and, you know, touch a child while on the playground. There are some access doors, of course. We note on this drawing a double door service gate. Any of the door hardware for the gates is all on the interior. So there's no hardware that is accessible from the interior. If there is any hardware on the exterior, it is lockable or a combination lock. Again, we do what we can to protect the playgrounds, but as I testified a little bit earlier, children are not on the playgrounds by themselves, and again, the number of teachers would be in compliance with the requirements of the state. Playground drainage. Generally, the playground material is synthetic turf. It's 100% permeable. The material underneath can vary depending upon the permeability that we want to have, like on site, whether we want to hold more water or less water, but generally we do use 3/8 inch stone, about 2 inches, and then 4 inches of 3/4 inch stone. We don't want to have an open grate on the playground, so we will be working with the civil engineer to keep all of the drainage under the playground, and we can do that by way of 4-inch perf pipe distributed throughout the playground to collect water and connect back in. That's just, again, something we'll work with the engineer on so that we just don't have any hazards whatsoever for the children that are going to be playing on the playground. And we've done that successfully with the majority of our playgrounds. As far as, again, drop-off and pickup, and I'll first start with number of parking spaces. Generally, for a daycare center that is anywhere from 10,000 to 12,000 square feet, 35 parking spaces is our target. And I can tell you confidently that in every application that we've had before board, the traffic engineer has testified to 35 parking spaces for the safety of the teachers, you know, so staff and parents coming on and off, was acceptable by way of ITE standards. Again, not saying what local jurisdiction had as their requirements, but again, just from my experience. What occurs in a daycare center that's different than a lot of other uses is, again, not like a school where the bell rings and everybody comes at once. And for those of you that have had children in daycare, you'll understand this. Generally, there's a 3-hour drop-off period in the morning, and there's a 3-hour pickup time in the afternoon. That is not a designated time. It's just when parents are dropping off their children. So if the center is opening at 6:30, you're generally going to have a drop-off time between 6:30 and 9:30 is when the majority of the children will arrive. Based on that, based on the 8 parking spaces, based on a turnaround time of drop-off and pickup of 8 to 10 minutes, and it's generally even more like 6 to 8 minutes, but we may have increased this because there's a little bit more of a walking distance to and from the building. But if you do the calculation and the number of turns that each one of those drop-off pickup spaces will do, you will see that the numbers will tell you that it will more than cover the 170 children if there were 170 individual children coming with individual parents. Generally, with daycare centers, there are parents that have more than one child in daycare. So they're coming with 2 children. So now when you talk about the trips, those trips start getting reduced. As far as the staff, the larger part of the staff in a daycare center is part-time. And many of those staff come by mass transit. So you're also having a reduction of cars that are coming from staff driving to the site. So when we look at the overall impact of the number of parks required for a daycare, what you end up having is you have the majority of the traffic in the morning being the parents' drop-off. The staff do not show up all at one time. The staff are coming in at staggered times so that the center is in compliance with the number of teachers required. Remember, I just said that the majority of staff is part-time, not full-time. So the part-time staff generally are from late morning to early afternoon when they're at the height of the occupancy in the building and they're meeting their teacher-child ratios. As children are coming in, the staff are coming in. As the children are leaving, the staff are leaving. So the other mystery of daycare is that when they are at the height of their occupancy in the middle of the day, is generally where there's about a third of the amount of parking spaces or more are vacant. And again, that's just how daycare kind of operates. And I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm just telling you what I know from my experience. And again, it was all testified already earlier about the fact that daycare uses are not required to have parking. It's my professional understanding that when that was put into place in the municipal land use law, it was actually for this particular example. It was all about corporate parks and parents driving to these corporate parks and daycare centers being able to be in those corporate parks and not having to add any more parking because the parents were already driving there.
Yeah, look,
And-
I'm an expediter, right? So I like to get things rolling.
Oh, yeah, no
we know
problem. Go
about the parking. I don't think many of us care about the 3 spots of the 420 spots. I think most of us here are more concerned about the little drop-off aisle and what impact that might have on the traffic and things like that. There's no way we can predict how many people will take in mass transportation. There's no way to predict how many people have more than one kid. So,
But I'm sorry. But the point I wanted to make about the turning of those 8 spaces is that generally there will be a space available when a parent is pulling in to drop off.
Okay.
And that's again based on daycare centers that are operating. Now, what if there isn't? Well, if a parent is in a rush and there isn't a parking space, because they are a parent of the center, they are going to know that they can continue around to park again at the side of the building. I know that what Celebree can testify to and enlighten you on is how the operators of the center communicate with their parents, again, to create a safe environment, especially with parking. I know the question was about, will there be teachers available to aid in what happens? That's something that they can testify to.
Right. Okay.
But there's one other architectural point, and that's the facade sign. Can you discuss what that sign is? And then there were some questions that board members raised that you may or may not be able to answer, but the sign that's on the building for this use, do you have details on that?
We do have, that would be, yeah, well, we do have an exhibit that we could show of what is being proposed for the sign on the building. Is that something that,
And how is it lit?
Mark, would you like? It's an internally illuminated sign. I know it was asked about when would the sign be turned off. Generally, the sign is on during business hours. Of course, they would have to comply with the zoning ordinance, but, you know, it would be turned off at the end of business hours if that's what is required. So this was prepared by the signage vendor, and again, you can just see, this is Strategic Factory.
Did we?
Was this submitted? I don't
This
recall
was
this.
not submitted, so this will be an exhibit.
A4, I think, right?
A4.
Yes, sorry, this sheet was not submitted, but the sign details were submitted, so I had seen
Okay.
those, so, but this sheet was not.
And so this is just, again, this is a modified photo to represent, obviously you don't see the fence for the playground in this image, but the intent was to show the location of the sign, which is over the Celebree part of the building at the first floor.
I mean, that's a good photo to have up, just so you know, because that is the main entrance to the whole building. So there is ADA accessibility at that front entrance there, so no one can be able to park directly in front of that walkway, right? You're gonna maintain that ramp, right?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the ADA parking spaces also are on the side of the building.
Right, you know, but people are gonna be dropped off as well, and, you know, it's
Yeah, I
supposed to
mean,
be the
there's
most
also,
direct
there
route.
might be stroller parents that
Yeah.
come, so again, it is an advantage that that ramp is there.
Do you know anything about the smoking section and the separation that would be required? I'm not sure if that's your,
It's not, but I think it's just pretty much common sense that we don't want to have cigarette disposal next to the playground. The operator will be working with the building owners in order to essentially have that removed, relocated, whatever the case might be.
and do you know anything about these rodent boxes? It's first I'm hearing about it, so, okay, we'll have to.
No, but again, it's not uncommon that commercial buildings do have that kind of control, but obviously they will not be on the playground. And that's something that the operators will obviously be aware of, and will need to work with the building owners if there's any issues. Licensing is also looking at, you know, what's in and around the building as I testified, so.
Where's the front door?
Right there, that's it.
It's right here where the cursor, so you see where the existing right double door is? Yeah. Okay, so this door is gonna be shifting over into this panel. This door on the left is going to remain, and that's the door that will bring you into the main lobby.
Well, you need a certain amount of width of doorway for
Yep.
the whole building, right? So,
We'll comply.
okay. It's a playground where you're gonna have, equipment, right? Playground?
Correct.
Right. So you're gonna have, impact attenuation surfacing below. Is it gonna be unitary material?
It's a padding, and the padding is also a permeable material.
It's all permeable. Okay. The other thing is also, it's a playground. Is there any concerns about noise from the kids to the other office spaces above as kids running around playing? Because I work near schools all the time, and they don't, it's quite invasive when you're trying to work. So I don't know if that's gonna be an issue to the,
Again, you know, the applicants are obviously working directly with the building owners, so if there was a concern, they would be working that out with the owner.
okay, all right. So, to our professionals, I was reading the state requirements for the playground while he was talking. Is there no issue with the amount of space they're providing from a variance perspective? Because it seems to me it says it's 350 square feet plus.
As a minimum.
As a minimum, plus 35 square feet per child that's using it at the time, right?
Correct.
Right, so the most amount of children that are gonna be using that playground,
No, There's no issue here. I mean, just my read on this ordinance in the township is that the state says that daycares are permitted in non-residential zones, and we can't put stronger provisions on them.
I guess
than-
where I'm losing it here is we're here to talk about parking and playgrounds. And now I'm understanding that there's no variance even needed
No,
for, is
we're
that
here.
not right?
We're here for site plan approval. They
Oh,
need
site plan approval, okay,
approval.
but the two things were about, there was variances requested for parking and the playground size, is that?
And the
am I
front
right?
yard setback.
And the front
Yeah,
yard setback,
mhm.
right?
But no matter, even if they had nothing, they would have to be here for site plan approval.
Okay, so playground, we don't have to worry about, because they comply with the state requirements, is that correct? The size?
We comply, correct.
Just for the size we were talking about, right?
Size, yeah.
Okay, right.
Anything, because, so Wes, the variance that I'm talking about, the setback, that's just the general ordinance for the CI zone. That
Okay.
applies to every use, every
Okay.
property in that zone. My conservative advice to this board is that this section about child care center is not enforceable.
Okay.
And we shouldn't be asking for variance relief from there.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm asking.
Are you saying, my understanding was variance based upon what you originally said, because the playground's going within the 100 feet setback from the roadway, that's where relief is needed. Is that not right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's just the build, it's the same as any building setback.
Okay.
In Homedale, whether it's accessory, whether it's part of the principal use, part of a principal building, all of that is considered as the same setback requirement. So I believe the building has a pre-existing nonconformity.
I thought it was good. I thought 100 feet, right at that corner of the building, it's 100 feet.
Then you're right, that's what it is. Yeah, and we measured approximately 65 feet to the playground. So,
Okay, then I'll defer to Craig, because when I read this stuff, that was some of the things I saw, that they were seeking variances or design waivers for those things. So,
Yeah,
very often our review is different than their review.
right,
they
okay, all right.
focus more on the variances, where we focus more on the site plan
Okay.
characteristics.
We believe the only two variances are the setback to the playground and then the signage.
Okay,
Those are the
okay.
only variances.
I agree.
Okay. All right, that's why, all right, I was a little confused. Okay.
I just have,
Yeah.
for the architect, I thought the engineer testified to a black picket fence, and you're testifying to a white solid vinyl fence.
You're right.
It's a black picket fence, because that was my bad. And the reason for the black picket is because of it being in the front yard and it not being as imposing as a white solid. The evergreens are for the purpose of then providing that privacy that otherwise a solid fence would provide. So just revising my testimony that yes, it would be a black picket fence.
The bollards that you're gonna use in front of the playground, what is what's the word I'm looking for?
Impact.
The impact, what are they
Velocity.
rated for?
Well, that can be provided by the engineer, but I can't give you that information, but I could tell you that just generally, that is the standard detail that we use, only because that's the accepted detail, whether it be by DCF, and as well as the building code. Also, those bollards, we would have them, covered with a vinyl cover, which color we can choose, so again, it kind of blends in more with the landscaping as opposed to standing out. It could also be safety yellow. Again, sometimes there's a preference either by fire, police, but, we would look at it as having it blending in back with the landscaping.
So what is the standard? Is it 5 miles an hour? Is it 25 miles an hour? What
I'm
would-
not a traffic engineer,
Oh.
so I can't answer that question. I'm sorry about that.
And I don't think a traffic engineer can either, but perhaps our civil engineer.
I don't have an actual miles per hour that I can testify to, but I can tell you that it is a beefy bollard. That it is it's a 6-inch steel bollard that is extending 4 feet into the ground, and it's going to have a concrete encasement 6 inches around it. So the concrete's going to go down 4 feet plus another 6 inches, with 6 inches around. Bollard would be filled with concrete, and then also, plastic covering over it. So I don't know what exactly that would be rated to, because obviously it depends on soils, the bearing capacity of the soil, the speed of the vehicle, the angle that it hits. But I will tell you that this is a standard detail that we use all throughout, not only residential areas, commercial areas, but we also use this detail in industrial areas where you have tractor trailers moving throughout. I could certainly get more information if requested.
Could we ask to get that, just so we have an idea?
Yeah.
And what governs that? Is it,
Building code?
is it building code, or is it
Well, I'm looking here.
the playground approval through DCP&P?
I mean, it says, it's.
Like, why did you pick that? Why did you pick that size in that one? Because it's required somewhere, right? I'm guessing.
It's required for licensing.
Okay, for licensing. Yeah.
Required for licensing, yeah.
Okay.
The spacing of the bollards, is that, I heard 4 feet, I heard 6 feet.
Yeah, generally, we do it at 6 feet, and, again, at times we'll do it at 4. It depends upon even more the operator, but no more than 6 feet.
And if the board has a preference, we have no issue.
In general, my concern is right at that corner. So if at the corner where the sign is gonna be, they were 4 feet rather than 6 feet, I don't see any reason for them to all be 4 feet, however.
They made that
you know,
sign
where you're,
a vehicle barrier as well.
there
That
should
would
be,
help,
the
yeah.
boulder.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that go parallel to the road, you're not gonna get
Right,
steam
just
getting
the
up there.
potential head-on. That's
Really.
fair.
And looking at the sheet number 6, grading and utility plan. And then I wanted to ask about the playground too. But on this sheet number 6, it's called grading and utility.
Yeah. Wakes the cars. Higher car signal bollard, higher, lower car signal bollard, lower.
We have it.
All right. In the playground, you've got dark gray. What is that? Dark gray in both of the sections, and then you've got that X, which represents the covering, sort of gazebo, I guess.
So the playground is not 100% detailed at this time. Those gray areas and that X are areas that we're kind of reserving for where the playground equipment would be. We haven't finalized that design yet, but that's the intention, to kind of show that we have flat areas that will be where the equipment will be.
Okay. And
It's just conceptual at this point.
I see. And just get me back to that drain. Presently, that area is sort of sloped to drainage, right? It's all grass slope. So what's going to happen in terms of the excavation? I don't need detailed testimony, but the end result is going to result in a flat, completely flat surface?
It's generally going to be at the surface, no more than a 1.5-inch pitch, and that's to meet accessibility. But keep in mind, the turf is 100% permeable, so it's not really about the turf, it's about what's below it, and really the grade that's below it, right, is going to become the real drain surface. That makes sense? But what happens is, it's going to be generally flat, turf. The submaterial will contain drain pipes, where if you just envision a 4-inch type of French drain, and we have a series of them running through the playground that then would tie back into the existing RCP there. So generally, as the water is coming through the turf, through the material below it, which will be drainable, it will drain through those pipes and down and into the existing drainage. Obviously, there's going to be water that's just going to remain within, right, until it dries. But that's how we would handle that, so we could eliminate having an open drain.
The drain that's shown,
Mm-hmm.
if you walk on the playground, are you seeing that drain, or that's
No.
below? It's hidden below the...
Well, we're going to eliminate it. So again,
drain that's there.
yes. The grate will not.
The grading one that they're showing.
The grate, we are gonna work with the civil engineer, so the grate is eliminated. And instead of that, the design will be an integrated drainage system of piping to tie back into that existing RCP. So follow me? Otherwise, what would happen is the turf would be over the top of that grate, and we make the area of that turf removable. So if there's maintenance that has to be done, they can do it, but we by no means want to have a grate open in the, in that area. So that's why we're going to work to redesign it to not have that. Okay, we'll come up with a solution that will work, yeah.
Yeah, it's just my biggest issue really is the noise. I don't share your sentiment that a fence is gonna prevent noise or attenuate noise.
Well, this fence is not.
Right.
But the noise will impact who? The other, it's not gonna impact the public, right? Because we're right on.
No, that just more the
other
tenants, and I don't know, I'm being honest, I just don't know the area as well as Wes does.
Mr. Chairman, that's a property owner issue, he gave consent for this application.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if he, they're choosing to lease to this applicant. It would be one thing if there were residential properties nearby that were on different lots, but this is
Okay.
a commercial site,
okay.
and he's offered this lease to this tenant, so.
And the
fair enough.
building itself, those windows don't open, those are solid
Those are
windows.
solid, okay.
Yeah, so they would have to hear the kids playing through those windows, but that's,
Okay, well, if Kate
It's-
says
it's
it's a
also-
non-issue, then it's a non-issue.
Yeah,
then
it's
I-
also, it's a lot, I mean, just anecdotally, it's a lot different having, one classroom out than an entire, for example, where I live, at Jersey City Public School recess. So, it's not quite as.
Okay.
But nor, I would tell you that when we are essentially kind of bordering a residential area, we are paying more attention to utilizing a sound attenuation fence. Here with this condition, with Route 35 really being our neighbor, we have, a very nice buffer to the east between what is also a commercial building. We really don't have any residences we were impacting. So our concern was more that the playground was in the front of the building, and we didn't want it to be imposing since it was in the front yard, hence why the design.
Okay, anyone else? We all good? So I guess that now we can, that's the public, right? All right, so right now, we're gonna take, first we'll take, comments.
Questions and comments?
Yeah, first we'll do, questions first, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah.
All right, we could do, if anyone from the public, wants to come up and, ask the professionals of the other ownership of questions. Yay, nay? All right.
Public comment?
All right, if there's no questions at this time, I'll open the floor for the public for comments, if there's any. No? Oh. Swearing for comments?
Yes.
Okay. We just need your name and address and be sworn.
Roland, 12 Clinton Court.
I'm gonna have to swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Okay. Just spell your name for the record.
Colin. Mr. Fagan, you brought up a question earlier about the back corner of the property.
Yes.
There seems to be a lot of garbage back there. There was a prior site where the former person who was there has left, but has left garbage back there, left screening. There's some trucks back there that are permanently parked. First question is any of that permissible?
And there's fencing as well.
I'm sorry?
Fencing, there's fencing around that
That's correct,
chain link.
yeah.
What was the question?
Is all of that acceptable, or is that illegal?
That's a township issue.
Yeah, that's not,
Well, he brought it up,
But-
so
But we can't, this board can't.
I'm
address
asking,
it.
yeah, Mr. Fagan brought it up more as available space for additional parking that,
Yeah.
yeah, but there is trucks back there that prevent any parking.
Mr. Colon, without, how's it going? Without having any of their, prior approvals and their zoning permits, anything like that in front of us, we don't know that right now, and that's one of the reasons that this board
The
is
owner
not.
is here, I just spoke with him
Right.
earlier, he's aware of that.
Okay, but this board does not have the power to, what's the word I'm looking for? The zoning officer and the code. Enforce. This board
or
does
make a
not have,
condition.
this board does not have
Or consider.
enforcement power.
In the application.
Yes, so but I would recommend, especially if the owner is aware, just bring it to community development's attention, and maybe they can work it out.
All right, but it's on the testimony, correct?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions from the public? Okay, then at this time, I'll close questions.
Comments.
What's it?
Your closing
Oh,
comments.
I'm sorry, closing comments. All right, so at this point, what do we do now, Marty? Do we?
Just a discussion, unless Sal has any.
Yeah, I don't know if the board has any other questions of the operator and/or the owner. We didn't bring them up unless you had specific questions for them.
Well, in general, my comments, I don't know if it's to you or to the board, my things that stand out in my mind are the signage in general, and especially the propensity or the wanting to exit out onto 35. That's got to be marked, so
Yeah.
you're not supposed to go out that
And
way.
we agreed, and they're legitimate questions. I've been out to the site a few times too, I understand it. We agreed that if the board were to grant this approval, we would work with your professionals to come up with not only striping, but signage, directional and otherwise, on the entire site, not just in front of this building, so that your professionals are comfortable that it will be safe.
Right. And so specifically further for my professionals that exit onto
Union?
Union, it's almost like it should be 3 lanes. One entry, one left-hand turn, and then one right-hand turn, or if you want to go straight across into the development. Because it's a wide entrance, but it's totally unmarked and somewhat dangerous. If you're making a left-hand turn out of that to go out to the highway, you take your life in your hands.
So, Mr. Figgy, yeah, I was out there also today, and it is a wide, it seems to be a wide driveway. We would just need to check. I could work with the engineer.
We just asked the owner, and we agree that we would stripe it so that it would potentially have those 3 lanes, and we'd work with your professionals on that.
And then finally, when you're going down that, well, 2 things. On that driveway to the east, that's two-way, some indication that it is a two-way. Somebody coming off 35 to go straight down the side of the building, not necessarily paying attention, it looks like it could be a one-way street. You don't know that traffic may be coming up that way to go toward 35 to make a left to drop a child off. Because you have to come in from the back if you're coming from Union Avenue. And going down driveway, pointing to exit. So if you're going the opposite way, to know where the exit is. To know that you have to go to the back of the property and make a left to
Right.
get out to Union
Right.
Avenue. That's all. Thank you.
And I think with applicant's consent, all signage, including the 4 areas you mentioned, are gonna be a condition. You're gonna work with our
Yeah.
board professional to come up
We're
with.
we're gonna have to
acceptable
come up
signage.
with a signage and striping plan of the entire parking lot and drive aisles, and then we'll present that to your professionals and make sure they're comfortable. You created a lot of work for our engineer, which is good. Yes, he is.
Safety first, Sal.
Safety first, we agree. We agree. And, the site being 30-plus years old, standards are different now, and you're gonna bring at least the internal circulation up to a more practical, current, functioning code.
And I agree with you, Wes, on that. There is some need for upgrade on that, and so I'm glad you're addressing it. Also, the signage, noticed the one sign going out to Union Avenue from the property. The stop sign is very faded. So like you said, it's been there a long time. It's barely recognizable. So those upgrades should be considered as well, when you're making
Agreed.
those decisions.
Okay.
And
so-
you're gonna get the crash impact of the bollards, correct?
Yeah, we'll provide that, and we'll get that to your engineer. If they want it upgraded, if there's a way to upgrade it, we can do that as well.
Yeah, Ron and Marty, I would have a suggestion for the special condition for that is that, you know, that they provide details on the bollards and all plantings around the fencing there to the satisfaction of board professionals.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, like you said, I agree that if like a solid white fence is not good there. I just said to Craig, we don't want it to look like a trash enclosure or something like that. But I think that, you know, just take a closer look at the evergreen stuff like that in addition to the bollards in that area.
Yeah, and I would think the bollards on the corner should be rated higher than the ones along the side.
And 4 feet.
Maybe
Yeah,
just closer
ju-
together, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, just because it's, you know, it's also iciness, you can come off that road too, there's a lot of reasons.
I
so-
did measure, and we do have the bollards at 6 feet on center. We can definitely put them at 4 feet on center at that corner, and then, as you mentioned, maybe switch to 6 feet as we get
Yeah.
closer to the entrance. But yeah, we can do that, and we can, you know, I'll check with some of our traffic engineers about, you know, how strong the bollards need to be.
Okay, I guess, what do we do, Marty? I guess we have, we close to the
let's-
public and we talk, or?
Public's closed, so
Yeah.
unless Sal has a summary, we can close the hearing, and if he wants to.
Just very briefly, we believe this is a really good use, consistent with the complex itself. I think that based upon very valuable input from the board members and the public, the board professionals, we're going to improve the site, at least it relates to site circulation and safety. We've agreed to address all of the conditions that were raised by the board members and the board professionals, and we'd request that the board grant the approval, subject to all those conditions.
Okay, we don't need the powwow alone, do we, outside the public?
We can do what?
Sometimes we powwow outside
You
the
can,
public.
no, you don't need to do it.
We don't, so we
If
just go.
anybody feels like they want, you can make the motion first, or if people make comments first, but otherwise I'd make a motion to approve based
Yeah.
on, none of those last conditions we talked about, there might be several others that we had during the testimony that I'll pick up, and we'll make sure we circulate before we vote on that resolution.
Okay, anyone want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay.
Was it Mr. Eckerson?
Yes, he seconded, yeah.
Mr. Eckerson?
Yes.
Mr. Fagan?
Yes.
Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Mr. King? Mr. Silverman?
Yes.
Application approved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Wes, don't go anywhere yet. We got one more thing. See you with me, Jack. All right, so, the last thing we have here is the memorialization of the resolution for 38 Line Road. Resolution 2025-03, PB 2024C, Washington Phillips LLC, 38 Line Road, Block 28, Lot 22, R40B zone. Applicant approved for a preliminary and final major subdivision to subdivide the existing lot into 3 residential lots.
And that was circulated to applicants, attorneys here, his professional as well as ours. We had a couple little minor tweaks, and it came to Irina late, so you guys probably haven't seen the most final version, or,
I actually still don't have it.
okay, so it's there somewhere in cyberspace, but
It will be provided tomorrow.
it's subject to the 7 specific conditions that we all talked about, if you
Yes.
haven't seen it.
And it just was some revisions that Kate made that we have no issue with.
Got it?
All right, so we,
I just tweaked what the actual
Correct.
variances that were granted were.
Right.
we don't have to make a motion to accept or?
Motion to approve.
Yeah, so motion,
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Eckerson?
Yes.
Mr. Fagan?
Yes.
Mr. Emma?
Yes.
Mr. King? Mr. Silverman?
yes. Okay, with, so let's see, we have any professional reports at this time?
None?
None? None? All right, everyone, thank you, we're adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
And second.
Second, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night.